Oftentimes, one of the coolest things that you can learn how to do on the guitar is trying to create different ways of moving. We get so used to thinking about positions and things like that, and we just play in those positions. But really, it's the paths that move us around the fretboard that can really make some creative ideas. And again, it depends on what your output is. I mean, if you're trying to do something that's more standard blues, this might not help you. But if you're looking for something that's just a little more creative in kind of textually, this is a really great thing to try. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be playing. Again, I try and stay in, E minor / G major as much as I can because they're two very common keys for most people. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try and create a pattern, and then I'm going to show you how many different ways that I approach this to make different things out of it. So let's say, for instance, we were going to be in E minor, okay? So what I'm kind of visualizing here at this point is this. That position, if you know what that is. Now again, for many years, that's exactly what I would do, is I would play up and down these, just playing that shape. That's what I would do, and then try and think of things inside there, and that's great, and of course you have to do that. But what I started doing was figuring out ways to move through there that was more interesting for me, and it sounded more interesting to my ear, therefore it made my playing more creative, at least in my mind. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of playing all of that, we're just going to we're going to look at the fretboard a couple of different ways. We're going to expand and contract ideas, and then we're going to jump over things. And that's that. If you've heard me talk about this before, I'm sure you probably have. Those are very common ways of me moving across the fretboard. Is I'm always trying to, unless I'm doing speed patterns, I'm always trying to think of different ways of visualizing my movements. So let's just take a look here. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with this. Instead of playing 5 and 7 and 9 on this string, we're just going to play 5 and 7. And then on the next string, we're going to expand and we're going to play 5 and 9. So I'm playing a small one, which is 5 and 7, and I'm playing a large space, which is 5 and 9. And again, it sounds a little more interesting than playing the scale. Okay? So now once I get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next string, but I'm going to stay expanded. Number one, because it feels more comfortable, and most importantly, it's setting up the next movement that I'm going to show you. Because again, it's so easy as humans to go, well, I did a small one, so I got to do a big one, then I got to do a small one, then I got to do a big one. It doesn't have to be consistent. It's just trying to figure out what works best for you physically, and then what sounds best to you as well. So I've got the 5-7, 5-9, 5-9, and then that's going to lead to a small one, which is going to be 7 and 8. So I'm moving up there. And again, if I was playing over E or G, either way, it's going to sound just fine. Now, I'm not done. Now, when I get to the next string, I'm going to play 7 to 10. And then I'm heading up here to the 12. Now, I could do a million things from here, but that's the basic idea. Now, I'm just going to bring it back around. I'm going to do a pull-off from 12 to 8, 12 to 8. And I'll stop here on this note, which is the F sharp. Again, just as somewhere to go. If you were playing in G, you might want to direct it toward something to do with the G chord. If you're in E minor, you might want to direct it to something to the E minor. I'm just trying to give you a stoppage point. So I've got... Now the trick here is as you're playing something like this, the other thing you need to be aware of, really two things. One is dynamics, but more importantly than that is your approach to picking or slurring it as you play. Now, you might, again, I try and avoid all or nothing ideas in my life, on my guitar, anything, as much as humanly possible, because it just tends to get us in trouble. So in this case, you don't have to think, okay, I need to pick everything, or I need to hammer and pull everything. You just need to find what feels most comfortable to you as you're playing. So for me, I use a lot of legato. I use a lot of hammer-ons, a lot of pull-offs, things like that. I've always liked the sound of it. And sometimes I pick more and sometimes I pick less. So the way I'm doing this right now is I'm doing a hammer-on and a hammer-on and a hammer-on. And I'm also dynamically, I'm adding a little bit of palm muting at the beginning of this as well, which makes it sound a little more interesting. Okay, now when I get to the top of that, I come off of the palm mute because I'm too high up on the fretboard at this point, so I'm not using any palm muting, but I'm still using legato playing. Now again, sometimes you'll see that I'll pick some of these. If I slow it down a little bit, I tend to pick a few more of those. But for me, it's just whatever naturally comes out as I'm playing, and I don't necessarily do it the same way 700 times in a row. It's the concept is there, but the way I approach picking it is just whatever happens at that point in time, really. So just kind of be aware of those in your playing as well. Now when I get there, I'm sliding up, pulling off, and then coming back around. So that would be one idea. Okay, now another thing that we could do that's kind of cool is I'm going to take this same idea, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the 7th fret. Okay, actually before I show you that one, no, that's fine. We'll start on the 7. This is fine. So I'm shrinking that. Instead of playing 5 to 7, I'm just going to go to that 7. I'm going to play. So if you know anything about arpeggios, I'm playing the root, the 3rd, and the 5th of an E minor. Although that would still fit over a G if I chose to do that. So instead of playing the E, G, and B, though, what I'm going to do is take that last note, the pinky note there, which is the 9th fret of the 4th string, the B. I'm not going to play that. I'm going to go to the 3rd string right here, which is E. So again, in my head, I'm thinking of this as a common arpeggio that I might use, but I'm changing the pattern, so I'm using one note on each string. And again, I'm thinking of it as sort of an expansion and contraction idea, okay? But more so using my fingers, if that makes sense. So I'm just taking that first idea and trying to find something else to do with it. Now, when I get here, I'm going to end it the same way, okay? So I'm still doing that same thing. Now, the question is how to pick this. Now, logically, you'd probably want to go down, 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 and then down. I find myself, though, oftentimes playing down, down, up, and then down. Now, that probably doesn't make any logical sense, but that's what I do. So again, you have to figure out what's going to work best for you because you're coming to a new string each time. You know, you don't have to pick them, but you have to find a way of getting that string to vibrate. You know, you can certainly just hit it with your finger too, but you know, part of this is not just throwing it into maximum overdrive, trying to play it as fast as you possibly can, but it's figuring out the nuances of your approach to, well, how am I going to pick it and what I'm going to do when I get here, that sort of thing is what you want to be thinking about. And remember, this thing doesn't necessarily have to be da 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 da. It might be more of a rolling thing where it speeds up and slows down. You know, it just depends on what you want to do with it. However you choose to play it. So that's the second one we're going to do. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make another pattern, but this one is going to be based off the same idea, but we're going to be using some string skipping this time. So I'm going to take that same idea. I'm going to start off with 7, go to 5, and go to 9. And I am going to the B on the 4th string this time, the 9th fret there. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to head right up to the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And then the 8th fret. So now you'll notice I'm moving down. I'm on the 5th fret here instead of playing this one like we did the last time. I'm just repositioning that E and playing it over here. So when I go, now you'll notice I'm on my pinky. Now, if you've ever heard me talk about escape routes, I got to think about this because my other fingers are available on this side of the guitar. Well, what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to slide up to the 12th fret, okay, to reposition myself. And then I'm just going to do that 8, 12 to be consistent with everything else we've been doing. So when I come up, I'll just end it the same way, just again for consistency. You can do whatever you want with it. But so that's a third way that you could move across the fretboard. And you'll notice as you're doing these, it isn't, again, the focus shouldn't just be how fast you can do it. It's the fact that it sounds more creative than just going, right, that sort of thing. You're trying to find a way to move that just sounds a little more interesting to your ear. It's more creative. It's more inspiring for you to play. That's what I want you to be thinking about. Okay, now the next one I'm going to show you here uses all sorts of different things, still based off the basic idea. But what we're going to do is we're going to back up to the 6th string. We're going to play 5 and 8. Then we're going to continue on to that arpeggio that we just did. So for me, I'm playing that as a hammer-on. And then this note, it depends. Sometimes I pick it, sometimes I slur it. It depends on where I'm going and how fast I'm going, but that's the basic idea. Then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go to the 7th fret here, where I string skipped that most of the time when I was doing things. Either I was doing the outsides, right, when I was doing the wide ones, or I string skipped it. Well, now I'm actually playing it. Then I'm going to go back to my 5/8 that I had last time. Then I'm going to go to 7/10 like I did in the first example. So I have, and then I'll just end it the same way just to keep things consistent again. And again, there's no rhyme or reason to the tempo, whatever you want. Or, maybe you stop somewhere in between. When I want straightforward speed, that's what I'm looking for, right? That's when I tend to play these kind of patterns, where I'm using that scale thing I talked about in the beginning. When I'm not looking for that kind of speed, that's when I try and break out of the monotony of just playing those scales, and I try and find more interesting ways to move across the guitar to make something more interesting. And that's what I want you to be thinking about a little bit. So there's a few different little ideas for patterns that you could explore and see if you can implement into your playing.